Okay, Alex, I want to talk to you today about multiplying by powers of 10. So let's do a quick kind of refresher. If you remember, we've got numbers like this: 10 to the first, 10 to the second, 10 to the third, 10 to the fourth. When we think of those, what those really mean is you're multiplying like this one just times 10. But this one you're multiplying 10 times 10. This one you're multiplying 10 times 10 times 10. You're probably starting to notice a pattern, right? Like the little exponent number is how many times you're multiplying. So up here, we actually can label these. Like times 10 is just your 10 to the first. Your hundreds, 10 to the second, 10 times 10. Thousands, 10 to the third. And your 10,000s, 10 to the fourth, and so on and so on. And that can actually be kind of helpful. So today what we're going to look at is, all right, say I want to multiply some number. Like, let's do 8 times 10 to the second. You say, when would you actually use this? You know, people that are actually testing for COVID and all that kind of stuff, they use this all the time because you don't want to write out that there were 6 billion particles or whatever. You're going to use a number like 6 times 10 to the 18th. So scientists and doctors and all kinds of engineers use these numbers all the time. So let's do one like this, like 6 times 10 to the second. All right, when you work on this, you might hear some people say like, oh, you just move the decimal. That's not true. Your decimal is always going to stay right over here. What's going to happen is the value of your digit, that's 6, the value of it, it's going to go from 6 ones. Well, 10 times the second is 600. So it's going to go times 10. It's going to become 60. And if we do times 10 again, then we get 600. So what's happening is the value of that 6 has shifted over to the tens place all the way over to the hundreds place. So let's do a different one. So that's your key idea here when you're multiplying. You're realizing like, oh, the digit is just changed place value. Your decimal never moves. Your decimal is always just right over here beside the ones place. All right, let's do another one. Let's try bigger this time. Let's do just 8. We'll say times 10 to the third. Maybe you're thinking like, oh, well, I could probably just look up here and say like, oh, hey, 8 times 10 to the third. Yeah, my 8's going to go over there, but let's just watch it move. So you start with your 8 in the ones place. Okay, times 10. Now you've got 80. Times 10 again. Now you've got 800. Times 10 again. Now you've got 8,000. All right, well, that's kind of follow along with that, but what if it's a number that's got 2 or 3 digits? Well, let's look at one that's got 3 digits and talk about what happens. All right, let's say you get this number, 548, and we're going to do that one times 10 to the third. All right, well, first let's put the number down. It's kind of hard for me, and I've been doing this for a while, to really think through, like, okay, if you have 500 and you multiply that times 10 times 10 times 10, where does that land? I know it shifts over 3, but that's kind of tricky. It's not quite as hard for me to think about the ones place, like this 8. Okay, well, 10 to the third is 1,000. So what's 8 times 1,000? Oh, 8 times 1,000 is 8,000. So what happens to the 4 and the 5 there? Well, they're going to move as well, right? Like that 8's going to go over 1 place value, 2 place values, 3 place values. So is the 4. 1, 2, 3. It's going to go over 1, 2, and that's going to land there. That 5's going to go over 1 place value, 2 place value, 3 place values. So now my number is 548,000. 548, and I look up at the place value to identify it, 1,000. Well, let's do one more kind of like that. Let's do one with 2 digits this time. A little bit easier even. All right, so let's say I've got just good old 36. All right, 36, let's just multiply by something small. 10 to the second. Well, 10 to the second is 100. What happens if you multiply 6 times 100? You get 600. What happens to the 3? Well, you get 3,000. Because we multiply it by 10, and we multiply by another 10. It shifted over 2 place values. The 6 shifted over 2 place values. Okay, you may be wondering, for this last one, what happens if you have a decimal? Well, even though we're not going to focus on those today in the practice buddy, let's do 2.9. I don't have a decimal spot over here. I don't have tenths, but we'll just squeeze it in on that side. All right, well, let's multiply it by something like big. All right, 10 to the 5th. Okay, we know, I'll label it up here, that 10 to the 5th is 100,000 spot. So let's move that 2 first. Okay, times 10, times 10, times 10. Keep on going. We'd end up all the way over here. Erase this out of the way. In that 100,000 spot. What happens to the 9? Well, the 9 is at the same time, it shifts value as well. So we end up with this number. 290,000. 290,000. So what you're focused on today is, one, figure out when it says like 10 to the 7th or 10 to the 3rd, what place value is that? And then focus on thinking about what number we have in the ones place, where is it going to shift to, and all the other values will shift with it. And the number will grow as big as it needs to grow based on what you're multiplying it by.